Okay, this is getting interesting. Dr. Wolf is swimming with a pile of really young, naked, beautiful women. I had never been in the presence of naked women as part of a group. It was a little embarrassing for me to undress in front of them, but I decided to comply with their request. How easy it is to follow a group. There was something very special about this group, I'm sure. And after all we had just experienced, I realized there was no cultural imposition in this group. An inner peace settled over me, and the women began to enter the pond. Now naked, I did the same. The water was waist deep. They formed a circle inviting me into its center. With hands joined together in the circle, they moved in undulating motion, up and down, revolving around and around me. Their breaths moved up and down, in and out of the water, and the entire group began to sing as they were dancing. It was as though it were dancing just for me, and I began to realize they had become the essence of femininity, showing me their unconditional support and love for me personally. Time seemed to stand still. Ah, bet. I received a great gift from the women in that circle. It was as open and honest and honoring as ever I had as a man. Nothing like it has ever happened to me since, and I still feel the gift of feminine grace bestowed upon me that day in their dance of life, love, honor, and trust. After a while we all got out of the water. There were no towels, but we dried off in the cool evening air and slowly got dressed. From a particle view, there was nothing sexual about the experience. From a wave view, it was a bonding experience in which these women accepted me into their lives and hearts. From a more holodynamic view, they honored me in a way that is impossible for me to write. We wound our way to an apartment. Someone got a guitar, and we packed together with more damp bodies than the room would allow, and we sang Russian and American songs until 1 o'clock in the morning. I loved that group. I learned a new dimension of unconditional acceptance. I will never forget the honor they had shared with me. Okay, this is his assassination attempt. And this is really cool. And this is how Dr. Vernon Wolf is screwed up. He talks a good talk, but I don't know the meaning to this one. As many people know, the holodynamic program grew very rapidly in the former Soviet Union countries. Participants began to meet together, and from 1991 until 1997, there was an international conference of holodynamics held every summer in Moscow. Hundreds of teachers were certified to teach, and active programs were being conducted in more than 100 cities in that region of the world. In June 1997, the holodynamic community, sponsored by the 6th International Conference of Holodynamics. It was held in Dubna, just outside of Moscow, Russia. Unbeknown to any of us, this conference was infiltrated by a group of men whose purpose, we found out later, was to sabotage the program and kill its leader. Since I was the leader and the target of their attempt, and since the rumors and stories they have spread have caused some confusion among those who advocate a holodynamic view of life, I would like to report the facts and clear up the gossip that resulted. Here is, to the best of my memory, my report of the attempted assassination and the failed sabotage of the holodynamic program. I arrived in Moscow in May and met with people who were conducting the conference. In the group were 2 men I did not recognize. One was introduced as the marketing expert and the other as the facility manager. Both men were in their mid-50s and seemed more like businessmen than participants in the conference. When I asked the marketing expert if he had created any type of packaging for the program, he handed me a double-spaced 3-page outline. It came from our materials. When I asked him how much he was charging for his services, he replied that he wanted 1.5 million rubles. I immediately challenged both his approach and his cost. When he objected, I fired him on the spot. He left the meeting. When I questioned the second man, he explained that the conference was scheduled in Dubna at the retreat facility that would house the participants, feed them, and with excellent conference capabilities. He was in charge of that facility. He explained in some detail their plans for transportation and meals and communication capabilities. It sounded ideal, so he was included in our planning session. It had taken months to arrange a series of speakers from the academics of science and different business interests in Russia. Speakers were chosen because they had connections to special technologies to be used in creating a worldwide communication and education program. As a member of the board of directors of the Astronautics Association and being director of the academic of Holodynamics within the Academy of Natural Science of Russia, I had been exposed to more than 10,000 rather amazing technologies. 10,000 amazing technologies that the world has not seen, and this was in 1997. Also would like to add, why would you fire somebody? You know, why wouldn't he do tracking on this guy to find out why he was asking for what he was doing? He got caught up in the game, in the dance of life. He was in his own little personal war where this Dr. Vernon Wolf wanted what he wanted, and this guy who wanted the 1.5 million wanted what he wanted. And Dr. Wolf wanted to be the winner, so he fired the guy, which created the war. You know, and instead of using his own tools to find out which one of them were right and solve the problem, unfold the solution, they didn't. He just fired him. I'll continue. I had chosen 7 of these technologies and had contracted with those who had invented the technologies to create a personal transceiver that would allow any person to have personal contact with the entire world of information. These technologies included an information disk made of beryllium that stored a terabyte of read-write information on a disk no larger than 50-cent piece. That's enough to store all known information from the beginning of history, and it could be put in a small portable transceiver that fit on everyone's wrist. Included was a high-capacitor battery 250 times stronger than anything we know in the West. It was made of layer levels of carbon, 1 molecule thick, that held the electrical charge, and it was green, so it required no heavy metals. Along with it came solar paint, so the system was self-charging and required no outside energy source. It also included a miniature high-definition video camera and screen. We don't see that today, and yet this is very old technology. Perhaps most amazing about this personal transceiver was a new antenna that was a quantum spinner. It reflected its information off the echo of a normal bandwidth. Using this antenna, it was possible to put 1 billion conversations on a single transponder without interrupting any regular radio, phone, or television programs. I arranged with the Russian Space Agency to launch the 6 satellites necessary to cover the planet with the system. The personal receiver would allow people to talk with each other in high-definition video without hesitation or loss of time. For me, it was the future of communication. I would revolutionize business, education, and government. I'd even arranged for the credit card system to be established in the banking system of Russia and its republics. This would be the first credit card system established in these countries, and it would be used to create a free enterprise economy. In addition, I had completed a comparison of each of the major schools of thought about consciousness and whether they included the known mechanisms of consciousness or not. It was to be a wonderful conference, and because the holodynamic community was on the leading edge of consciousness and were the powerhouse behind the privatization of the former Soviet Union, the conference in Dubna was to be the wedding of the technology and the people who could put it to use. We were all excited about the potential. Every child could be given a personal transceiver. The best of education would be available at the touch of a button on the wrist. Can you kind of see how Dr. Wolf is like really messed up with the corporate world? And he was just transforming Russia from not being able to make any money to, okay, let's make you very, very rich. And that was the battle, is, he wanted to be, he fired somebody that was asking for too much instead of looking at both of their belief systems and money, because I really seriously believe this guy has money issues. The first indication I had that the conference had been taken over by a group of agents was during the first session of the conference. I was informed just prior to my opening speech that the technology speakers are canceled. When I asked the translator what that meant, she explained that some of the speakers would not be coming. When I inquired as to who was responsible for that action, I was informed Mr. Shuin said there was no security, so they could not be allowed to speak. Mr. Shuin was in charge of the facility, and I challenged his right to make such a decision without first inquiring as to what security procedures were needed and how we could implement them if they were not already in place. But the translator explained that Mr. Shuin was not present in the building and that I was not scheduled to speak. So with some degree of frustration, I stepped up to the podium and welcomed everyone to the conference. Those in attendance knew in advance that we planned the wedding. They came because they wanted, in part, to participate in the program that would bring the personal transceiver into the world. Then, before I had even finished my speech, I was found out later the rumors began. One American couple, who were attending because of their interest in the program, was rumored to be involved in strange and perverted sexual activity. Two women who were rooming together were accused of bisexual activities. By the second day of the conference, every child had disappeared from the setting. When I asked where the children were, the translator said their parents took them home. Then I stood on the crest of one of the greatest moments in the history of the program, and everything was falling apart. I knew that each conference had honored the presence of children. The fourth international conference had sponsored children's art. The entire program was orientated to improving education and family relations, and we had continually proposed integration of children in society. When I asked why parents would take their children home in the middle of the Holodynamic conference, the translator said they did not want them to be exposed to the conference. Further inquiries were met with, "I do not know." When I asked the parents, they said they did not trust some of the participants. When I wanted further details, they said, "We have taken care of it." I was isolated from their discomfort. I was so deeply disappointed. That day, Mr. Shuin began to make regular presentations to the assembly. When I asked the translator to interpret what he was saying, she responded with generalities and mundane comments that made very little sense. It was not until the second day that I realized the translator was part of something happening that was foreign to anything we had ever experienced. It became clear when the banker got up to speak. I had spent 3 months working with the banker to create a credit card system. It was all agreed. The contracts had been signed. The cards had been designed. Permissions had been granted. But when he got up to make the presentation, the first thing he said was, "We cannot issue private credit cards." His speech went on for over an hour. The discussion was being held, but my translator seemed incapable or unwilling to translate for me. I knew several good translators, and I decided I would have to get one of them to come and translate for me so I would know what was going on. Immediately I got a phone line out and called for a translator I could trust. She flew in the next day. To my knowledge, that was the last and only time anyone was able to communicate with the outside world during the conference. All communication was cut off. All information was taken under control. It was done very professionally, and it was done totally covertly. I want to tell you some of the details because of the effect it had on me and on other participants. I'll continue on another time.